Hello everyone and welcome to a long time incoming video. I know it has been a little bit since I've most recently updated and I do apologize for that. However, I do have classes and when I do have some time I primarily stream on Twitch as I have mentioned many times before. But that being said, with this video and the beginning of a brand new playlist, hopefully more content comes the way of the YouTubes. Now, as I have mentioned this brand new playlist, I'm excited to announce that it is going to be covering all of the useful tips and tricks and techniques that I use to make these in-game games in Astroneer. Now what I mean by all of these components is that I will be talking about how these paddles work, how ball movement works, how object collision works, as well as some interesting logical things like state machines and their various applications along the way. That being said, if there is something that is unclear or something else that you wish me to discuss, then by all means either leave a comment below or hit me up on Discord or any other means that you feel necessary and just let me know. And if it's something that I think a lot of people would benefit from or it's an interesting topic, then I would be happy to make a video on it. And hopefully with this new playlist I can get a little bit more content out because I don't have to worry about building things, testing them, and then going through them and then recording a video. I kind of have most of this done, and I can just record it and put it on up for all of you guys. So that being said, with the start of this playlist, I'm going to cover a more simple topic of display board creation, as well as a very useful cable pin technique. Now this cable pin technique, as you can see, I have a little bit of a demonstration set up over here. Now these cable pins on these lights up here are stretched further than they're supposed to be. They're quite a distance up. And you can actually do this by hovering over the object that you wish to attach it to. See it gets highlighted? And even though the target pin doesn't quite get there, you can still click and it attaches anyways. Now, pre-Automation 2.0, this was actually a very useful technique because I could have my figurine platform filled with floodlights, and then I could connect from a very long distance the appropriate cable pin, and then when they triggered, they would turn on or off that work light. The issue is, however, with Automation 2.0, that no longer happens. So what's a little bit confusing here is that there are two pins on here. So one turns it off, the other turns it back on. These cable pins, when stretched afar, trigger the entire platform that these work lights are on. So they trigger every single one of these work lights. Now, if you look over here, I stretched one of these work lights up to the upper left on the eye, and the one on the lower right is traveled normally. So it's not by any stretching technique. And in doing so, this one turns the entire platform off, and then this one gets turned back on. So that's kind of what happens with these stretching techniques. And this was very, very annoying because when I came to my save, Automation 2.0, triggering anything on my figurine platform now triggered the entire platform. So I spaced everything out in individual floodlights. And each of these floodlights are individually connected by a stretched cable pin from a very long distance away because my circuitry takes up a lot of space. So I kind of need to use this stretching technique. I could certainly have used a series of button repeaters to get it all the way over, but each of them would have probably taken 2 to 3 button repeaters a piece, and setting that up would have just taken forever. So stretching like this is a very useful technique, and it makes things very, very easy. Now, if you did want to use one of these figurine platforms, and this is something that I'm starting to use in one of my new designs for a player versus computer tic-tac-toe, is to have a figurine platform with a set of buttons behind it. So what you could do is you could have each of these work lights triggered by a button right behind it. And then you stretch from all the way over here to the button itself. That way you can still use the platform because the button that actually connects to it is not stretched, but what triggers the button is stretched from way far out. So it's an extra set of buttons that you need if you don't want to have to do something like this and you want it to look very nice and consistent by using one of these platforms. You should certainly use the button technique, but if you're fine with something that looks like this, definitely go with a nice work light spread out technique like this. That being said, there is one other thing left to discuss on how these boards should function. Now, I ran into this issue with Pong and I thought I had fixed it in Breakout, but it turns out I didn't. You need to make sure that when you design a board, you don't have a repetitive pattern. In Pong, when the players would hit the ball back and forth, I did it originally with an 8x8, but then you have your paddle, you have a layer on the side, and then your paddle. So it's really a 6x6 play area. In that 6x6 play area, it was a very repetitive pattern. you would hit the ball and they would all bounce and just kind of go in a circle. Nothing really interesting would happen. So to fix that, I had to add in an extra row into Pong to make it so that it was not a repetitive pattern. With Breakout, I thought that I had fixed it by doing an 11 by 8 board instead of an 8 by 8 or a 6 by 6 or something that's very consistent units. But it turns out that that did not quite work properly. And the reason it didn't is because on this second row, once you get to this second row, you cannot actually beat it unless you lose a life, because you can get to a position where you can't actually knock out any more bricks until you reposition the start of the ball. And this is kind of annoying because if someone was trying to beat it, say, without losing a life, or someone had already lost a life or two and they get to this row, they now need to lose one in order to progress, which is not in the spirit of the game. Again, this could have been fixed by either adding more height to it or adding more width to it, or one of those type of strategies. But even if we fix the second row, we might have broken the first or the third. So that's kind of something that you need to keep in consideration. For games like this, it is significant and it has to kind of be thought out and approached. But for other games like the tic-tac-toe one that I'm working on and other things like that, it's not terribly important, but it is worth keeping in mind. So as I said, hopefully you guys will appreciate the beginning of a playlist like this. I'm actually pretty excited to talk about some of the strategies that I've used in this, because while some of them could kind of fall in the circuitry range, they're interesting ways to look at the functionality that we would approach. So that being said, this is going to be the beginning of a great playlist. If you have any topics that you wish for me to discuss, by all means, leave a comment. As I said, I primarily do stream on Twitch, so by all means, follow me on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, check out Twitter, anything, nothing, or all the above. All I appreciate is you guys just hanging out and watching the video, or even hanging out on Twitch sometime. But have a good rest of your night. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next part of the playlist soon.